My name is Helen, and I'm 32 years old. Although it is the beginning of a new year, nothing good has happened at all. Most of our electrical appliances in our house have broken down, and my eldest daughter, Maggie, had to change classes as soon as she entered the 3rd grade. And since she was not in class with all her best friends, she goes to school every day in a very grumpy mood. She often asked for a day off because she was unhappy at school. I tried to calm her down and make her go to school every day, but to be honest, it's very difficult to do that every single morning. My younger son, Tim, began playing volleyball during spring at his volleyball club, but he recently sprained his finger. It seems like he had a fracture, and I had to arrive at work late every week to accompany him to the hospital. People at work makes me feel ashamed of myself every day, since they would talk behind my back just because I had kids. My husband, Dan, quit his work 3 months ago because he got mentally depressed due to the horrible power harassment he received by his previous boss. Although he transferred to a new company where it's easier for him to work than before, his income had dropped drastically. Despite these problems which happened to our family, Dan and I are doing the best we can at the moment. Recently, however, something horrible happened to our family. My mother passed away. She had been very healthy until recently, but she had been feeling exhausted for days on end and went to the nearest hospital for a checkup. I accompanied her to the hospital, and at the hospital, the doctor told us the name of the disease that she had, and I really couldn't believe my ears. She had terminal cancer. My mother was surprised as well. When the doctor told me that the disease had progressed to the point where there was nothing they could do, my mind went blank. My mother, who was surprisingly calm, laughed and encouraged me. "Oh, don't worry. Maybe I can get better." My mother's positivity at times like this was one of the best things about her, but at that time, it even looked like she was pretending to be fine. Her condition worsened day by day, unfortunately, and only 1 month after we were informed by the doctor about her disease, she passed away. The pain and loneliness of knowing that someone's life had been snuffed out so easily, and that I could no longer talk to my mother, whom I loved so much, overwhelmed me, and I felt as if there was a huge hole in my heart. Because I had my kids, and because I was just so busy with preparations leading up to the funeral, I couldn't even actually feel the sadness of my mother's death. After everything was over, an unspeakable sadness overtook me, and I sobbed in front of my mother's photo as I had realized that I was saying actually goodbye to my beloved mother. Then right after, something had happened. One day, a month after my mother's funeral, I found a letter from a credit card company in our mailbox, and it was sent to my name. I did indeed have a credit card, but I had never used it since I got married, and it had been hidden in the back of the drawer where I kept my bank book and personal things. Thinking for a moment that it had expired and a new credit card had arrived, I opened the letter. Then, when I opened the letter, I found a detailed statement of the credit card which states that I had used the credit card when I had absolutely no recollection of ever using it. The total amount exceeded $10,000. Even though I looked at the details of the statement over and over, I really had no idea what they all were. I thought my credit card information had been hacked, so in panic, I called my credit card company. I explained the situation and asked them to stop the card. Then, when Dan came home from work, I apologized to him and explained the situation. My credit card information might have been stolen. About $10,000 were used with my credit card. Huh? You're joking, right? Dan couldn't believe what he was hearing. I apologized to him repeatedly. Immediately after that, I searched for the credit card I had put away in the back of the drawer, but I couldn't find it anywhere. I even came up with a theory that maybe a thief had stolen it, since I never took out the credit card after I put it in the drawer the last time.
This all happened because you had a credit card that you never even used.
I couldn't say anything back to Dan, who was half angry and half fed up of the situation, as he had a point, and all I could do was to keep apologizing. $10,000 is a very large sum of money for us family. Since it was impossible to pay it all in one lump sum, we finally decided that we would pay it back in installments, and for the rest of the day, I was just depressed. That day, after the kids had gone to bed, when I was reviewing the family account book besides Dan, who was looking over at the credit card statement, Dan looked like he realized something. What happened? When I asked, Dan pointed to one particular item on the statement that made me dizzy just by looking at it.
It was the name of a hotel where my mom said that she was going on a trip with her friends this month, and that's where they were all staying at. And $4,000 are being charged from there.
I didn't even know my mother-in-law, Violet, was traveling until Dan told me just then. But when I stopped the credit card, I remembered that the lady on the other end of the phone had told me that it was being used at a certain outlet mall as well. That outlet mall was also located at where Violet had traveled to. And on top of that, Violet had visited us just last month. So, I got more suspicious and came up with a theory. Could it be that Violet has my credit card? Dan thought the same thing and immediately called Violet. At first, Dan was afraid to ask over the phone, but he gradually became irritated and annoyed once he began talking to Violet.
Huh? What the hell were you thinking? This is a crime, you know.
As we expected, Violet took my credit card from the drawer while we weren't looking. She used the card to pay for her friend's hotel fee and spending sprees at the outlet mall. And it seemed like she didn't think what she did was anything wrong. Dan thought that anything he would say over the phone would not get us anywhere, so he decided to visit Violet later on to ask her for more details. Of course, I decided to accompany him. This meant that I couldn't use my paid leaves anymore after that, but I couldn't really care less about it. While the kids were at school, Dan and I drove over to Violet's house. Violet has been living alone since her husband passed away a few years ago. Whenever I see her, she would pick on me, and when I go home for Thanksgivings and New Year's, she would push me around to help her house chores. You've married into our family, so you have to follow the rules of this house. The wife is the last one to eat her meal. While the husband is relaxing, the wife would work in the kitchen. Violet is always monitoring me on what I'm doing, and she points out every little details to me. Can't you be more efficient? This is why I hate mothers like you who work at a company. If you got married, then you should do more for your family. I pity my son and the kids. Violet knows what's going on in our family, but she will never stop criticizing me. When she came to visit me last month, she came unannounced to see if I was doing my house chores properly and if I'm looking after the kids. She stayed for about a week, and even when I went to work, she just only relaxed in the living room. I still remember that she never helped me with any of the house chores and would go back home after relaxing and doing nothing at our house. And I will never forget what Violet said to me when my mother passed away. Your mother will be relieved now. Parents are always in trouble when they have a child who isn't efficient at anything. I was angry at Violet for belittling me and treating my mother's death like that. And so, we arrived at Violet's house. Without a single apologetic look on her face, Violet quietly held out my credit card. It's not like you were using it, so it's fine.
That's not the point. The bill is coming to us.
Dan's voice rose at once after hearing what Violet has said. Of course, if someone spends a large sum of money on you, even if that person is your own mother, you tell her off. I was moved by Dan's honest attitude. But Violet doesn't budge at all and says this. Because Helen's mother passed away, you'll receive her inheritance, right? So why don't you just use it to cover the expenses? I'm sure you'll also get the life insurance money, so this amount is nothing compared to it. Violet is trying to make us feel sorry for her, saying that she's living on pension. I revealed my frustration at Violet, who once again took my mother's death lightly. Even though I was trembling with anger, she didn't care at all. Oh yes, this house has been badly damaged by termites recently. The building itself is so old, so I'm thinking of demolishing it. So, I'm going to your place next month. Huh? Violet was not intimidated at all by Dan's low, angry reply. Rather, she became more arrogant than ever. So, that means that I'll be living in your house, and we'll be living together. You have extra room anyway, don't you? I was speechless at Violet's attitude of trying to force us to pay for the money she had used, and even to live with her. Even Dan, who is usually so kind to Violet, is raising his voice at her outlandish comments and actions. If you don't want me to live with you, then give me the money to rebuild this house. Dan sighed quietly at Violet, who treated him with arrogance until the very end.
Helen, let's just go home now.
Huh? I followed Dan, who stood up without saying a word, and left Violet's house immediately. At that moment, Violet yells out to us saying this. Well then, since I'm not going to rebuild it, I'll demolish this place. So, I'll be moving in from next month. Please take care of me well. Violet's voice sounded so triumphant that it made me so angry. But Dan was even angrier than I was.
If talking with my mom is not going to work, I have no choice but to take action.
Witnessing Dan's anger, I realized that this was the beginning of the end for Violet. During the next month before Violet forces herself to move in with us, Dan told me about his plan. The company Dan works for has company housing as a benefit, and if there is an opening there, he planned for us to move there temporarily.
No matter what we say, Mom will do anything to have it her way. So, if that's the case, then we have to be prepared too.
Fortunately, Dan's company housing is close to our kids' school, and we brought enough daily necessities and clothes to live there for a while. I thought the kids would be confused by our sudden move, but they surprisingly got into it and helped us prepare moving out. I didn't know we had another house. Maggie looked really excited. I liked where we were living, but this one is really nice too. And Tim seemed to be enjoying himself. They used to sleep in their own rooms, but the company house only has one big bedroom. I think the kids were very happy to sleep with us in the same bed. And the room was perfect because it had furnitures and appliances. So, we were to live in that company housing for a while. Then, on the day when Violet promised that she would move in, when Dan came home from work, he showed me his phone with a big smile on his face. There, I found Violet's call history one after another. I also showed him the call history as proof that I had also ignored all of her calls. We both couldn't help but laugh. Just in time, Dan received an incoming call from Violet.
Okay, well, I guess it's time now for us to pick up the call.
Hearing the kids having fun in the bath, my husband put the phone on speaker so that I could hear it, and as he answered the call, Violet's frantic voice spread throughout the room. Where are you all right now? Well, it's no doubt that we tell her where we are. I already asked people to start demolishing the house, so I can't go back there. Please, let me in your house now.
Well, we can't because we don't live there now.
Huh? What the hell do you mean? She has no right to be like that. So Dan tried to tell Violet off and hang up the phone. Violet then immediately started to panic. Today's weather is heavy rain with flood warnings, remember? Are you going to just let me stay out here in the weather like that?
You have pension which you've been saving, right? Why don't you just use it to stay at a hotel?
How could you say such a terrible thing? That's not the kind of thing you should say to your own mother.
Well, you used Helen's credit card without her permission. No normal person would ask her to pay what you used with her credit card with her deceased mother's inheritance.
When my husband made a good argument, Violet choked up to argue back. But that's not what this is about. Just let me in the house.
I told you, I can't. If you go into our house without any permission, I'll call the police and accuse you of trespassing.
Now wait a minute. Don't you dare hang up on me. Ignoring Violet screaming, Dan hung up the phone without any care. After that, there were tons of incoming calls from Violet, but Dan consistently ignored them. Eventually, Violet left a message on the answering machine apologizing for what she had done. Later on another day, Dan requested Violet, who was staying at a hotel, to meet us at a nearby restaurant. Violet apologized for everything, including using my credit card without my permission, thoughtlessly saying that my late mother's inheritance should pay for it, and her previous verbal abuse toward me. She apologized with her head down that I thought she might hit her head on the table, and for my part, I felt a little bit better. After Violet's apology in front of Dan and I, she repaid me in cash the $10,000 she had used this time, taken from her savings account. My husband and I were astonished when we saw her remaining savings balance. Soon after Violet's husband passed away, Violet told us that her pension was low and asked us to send money to support her. It was an hour's drive to Violet's house, and our kids were still small, so we couldn't visit her often. So Dan and I discussed and agreed that at least we could support her by giving her some money. And since then, we have been sending a certain amount of money to Violet's savings account every month. Even when Dan changed his jobs and his income dropped, the amount which we kept on giving to support her remained the same.
I will not support you financially at all from now on.
Violet was astonished at her own son's words. From everything that had happened, Dan strongly resented Violet's selfishness, so we had decided to do so, even without seeing her savings account. But to this, Violet turned completely pale and desperately clinged on to Dan about it. That's not fair. I've been saving for a long time. I don't want to use it.
With that amount of money, you could easily afford to rent an apartment and even move into a nursing care facility. So I beg you, just stay out of our lives.
If we live together, this money could be yours, you know. I can't think of any reason for you all to not live with me in the future.
That's enough. You say that, but have you ever spent a single penny of money on us so far? Maggie's textbooks, Tim's textbooks, they were all bought by Helen's mother. You never even spent money on your own grandchildren. When I was also worried about quitting my job, all you cared about was if I was able to send money to you. Dan then brushed off Violet's clinging hands and walked away. I heard Violet crying, but I didn't even turn around. After that, as Dan had declared, we stopped sending money to Violet. It's most likely that we won't provide any financial support for Violet in the future. So this means that we had cut off ties with Violet. According to what we heard from Dan's acquaintance, Violet had rented an apartment and started living alone after that. It seems that moving into a nursing care facility wasn't an option for Violet, and she was afraid that her neighbors would find out that she had been cut off from her only son's family as well.
The new place she moved into seems to be a very old apartment, and she's supposedly living there quietly. Violet didn't hesitate at all to use my credit card because she just didn't want to touch her own savings. The reason why Dan was so angry with Violet was because he really couldn't believe her attitude towards our kids, Maggie and Tim, and us, and how she refused to support our family financially. Dan said that he found it extremely shameful that Violet was selfish enough to save money only for her so that she would have a nice lifestyle for herself when she got old. I feel like Violet will probably hardly use her savings. I'm actually nervous that with all the money in her savings account, she might get scammed someday. Even if she does get scammed, we definitely wouldn't help her in any way. After making sure that Violet moved into an apartment, we will move out of the company housing and move back into our house confidently.
Is there anything in the world that should be a higher priority than one's own family? Listen to the story of one man who puts his own convenience and feelings first and ended up in a pitiful way. My name is Leah. I'm a 35-year-old housewife, busy every day working part-time, doing housework, and raising a child. My husband Joshua is an ordinary office worker, and we have our 4-year-old daughter Zoe. She is our princess. My daughter is growing up well, and I feel like we have a perfect life together. Our marriage is relatively happy, and I have no complaints about my husband. I thought that our days would continue to be peaceful. But my daily life was disrupted by a certain event. What? Your sister is pregnant? The news took me by surprise. Because my sister-in-law had always said that she would be single for the rest of her life, and that she would be devoted to her work. She was what you would call a career woman, and I secretly respected her for that. Congratulations! What's he like? Is there going to be a wedding soon? When I asked my husband, he looked at me like he was uncomfortable to answer. My sister's partner has a wife and kids. What? That's... Well, my sister was more passionate about it. She knew he has married for a long time and continued the relationship anyway. Then she found out she was pregnant and he ran away and disappeared. So she decided to have the baby alone. Oh, is that so? It's a lot to deal with, huh? To be honest, as a married woman, I was a bit uncomfortable that she would have a relationship with someone she knew to be married. But I decided to be happy for her pregnancy. So it seems that she's going to go back to her parents' house to raise her child. Even though my parents are still there, it must be a lot of work. I'm thinking of checking in on her until things settle down, you know. I understand his concerns for his unmarried sister who is going to have a baby. That's why I accepted my husband's proposal. Okay, let me know if there's anything I can do. Thanks, I appreciate it. You take care of Zoe for me, please. I guess my parents and I would be enough to deal with the situation. I was a little touched that my husband is a really kind person. I knew he was a good father. That's what I thought at the time. Time passed, and my sister-in-law gave birth to a healthy baby boy. His name was Aaron. I thought it'd be inconvenient for them that we visit right after the birth, so I decided to see the baby after things had settled down. But then I started to notice something strange in my husband. Hey Mom, isn't Dad coming home today? Sorry honey, he's busy right now. Let's be patient a little longer. I wish I could talk to Daddy. Zoe's words made my heart ache. My husband hasn't come home for days now. Since my sister-in-law gave birth, my husband only comes home about 2 days a week. The rest of the days, he spends at his parents' house. I accepted my husband's proposal, but I never imagined it would go this far. Hey, Joshua, I think this is a little too weird. You should come home a little more often. Zoe misses you. I called my husband and told him right away. But he said, "What are you talking about? She has a baby now and it's the hardest time of her life." My husband got upset, saying I was selfish and handed the phone to his parents. "Hello, Leah. I'm sorry, but we just had a newborn baby. If you have a child too, you would understand that, right?" "It's true. You know our daughter has no husband. Why don't you show a little compassion?" Neither my parents-in-law nor my husband seemed to think this situation is unusual. That a father comes home only 2 days a week. After that, I patiently continued to ask my husband for help. Then he said, "Leah, I didn't know you were such a cold person." "All right, I'll come home." And he started coming home except on weekdays, but clearly he wasn't happy. I was angry at his attitude, but my daughter was so happy to see her daddy back that I swallowed my anger. Then one day, "Hey, where the hell are you?" I called my husband in a harsh tone. "Where am I? Of course I'm at my parents'." "What? It's Zoe's birthday today. I told you yesterday. Why don't you come home?" "What? Today is the day we are having dinner at my parents' house, you know. Besides, I have to bathe Aaron later." "Huh? Whose father are you?" By the time I raised my voice, the phone was already off the hook. My husband didn't come home that day after all. "I wonder, Daddy doesn't like me? I wish we could have had birthday cake together," Zoe murmured with a dejected look on her face. "Daddy's busy at work today, so let's eat cake with Mommy today, okay?" I almost cried myself as I watched my daughter's sad face as she puts the cake in her mouth, fighting back tears. "Whose father are you? What is with you and your sister?" "Well, it's..." "What? Is there something?" "No, it's not like that. It's just she's going through a lot, so I have to be there for her." "But your mom and dad are at home. Why do you need to be there too?" When I asked him about it, he just looked at me like I was the bad guy. I remember when my husband and I decided to get married, my sister-in-law said this to me. "I thought my brother loved me the most, but I'm glad he finally found the right person." At the time, I just thought my sister-in-law was a wonderful, independent career woman, and thought they care for each other deeply as a brother and a sister. But isn't that all? My suspicion grew. Some time passed, and Aaron turned 1 year old. We decided to have a birthday party at my parents-in-law's house. To be honest, I didn't want to go. "Is Aaron getting bigger? I want to play with him," my daughter said so innocently. And it's her cousin's birthday, so I decided to take her to the party. "Let's celebrate Aaron's birthday with the whole family," my husband said. You weren't there for Zoe's birthday. I remembered how she was sad that day, but said nothing. On the day of the party, we dressed Zoe in her favorite dress and left for my in-laws' house. My husband had gone back to his parents-in-law's house the day before, so it was just me and Zoe. After a year of this lifestyle, it had become the norm. My husband is away on a lot of business trips, and it feels like that. When we arrived at my parents-in-law's house, there was a lot of food, decorations, and presents for Aaron. We're all lined up. "Happy birthday, Aaron!" Zoe showed Aaron the presents and handed them to his mother, the sister-in-law. Wow, Aaron, I'm so happy for you. Without a word of thanks, the sister-in-law walked right past Zoe. I got the impression that she has become a bit of a bad person. She didn't used to be like this. My daughter seemed a little hurt by her attitude, and I had a sore look on her face. At this point, I was in the mood to go home. Then my husband, who was already drunk, called my daughter and said,
Zoe, come here.
Zoe felt happy to be called by her father and ran to him smiling.
Zoe is going to be Aaron's wife in the future, okay?
He said. What the? I was about to say something, but my daughter replied, No, I am going to marry William.
William? Who's that?
William? He's my friend from preschool. He's smart and cool. I like William. Zoe said this and tried to tell him what happened at the preschool. Then, my husband suddenly,
No, you were going to marry Aaron. Don't think about anything else.
He yelled at her like a crazy person. I couldn't help but storm over to my husband. Hey, what are you saying? Zoe is scared.
You, Leah. You should at least discipline your daughter. She can't have a boyfriend.
I can't believe you'd say such a thing to your own daughter. Moreover, my sister-in-law said, I'm looking forward to the wedding. Don't let Zoe go out with anyone.
Leah, understood?
She wasn't joking. She looked serious. It was even creepier that my parents-in-law were laughing as if they agreed with my sister-in-law. I can't take it anymore. I don't want to be in this place one more second. I couldn't help but raise my voice. Don't be ridiculous. Zoe is a person, not a puppet. I took my daughter by the hand and left my parents-in-law's house. She's never had a grown man yell at her like that before, and she was sobbing her eyes out. That's not Daddy. That's not Daddy. That's not Daddy. Right, Mommy? I hugged her tight and made up my mind. I don't need him. He's a lousy husband and father. I took immediate action. To protect my daughter, I decided that she and I would stay with my parents for a while. Finally, about 2 weeks after we separated, I received a call from my husband.
Hey, where are you?
I didn't have to answer that question. What do you want? I can't believe he found out we'd move out after 2 weeks. I guess that means he didn't come home at all. After all, he doesn't care about me or our daughter.
What's wrong with you? How's Zoe?
My husband asked impatiently. I don't have to answer that question either. Bye. With that, I hang up the phone. I wanted to avoid any contact between Zoe and my husband for a while, so I didn't tell him where we were. But then, he started contacting me every day.
Come on, Leah. Tell me where you are. I need to see Zoe. We are family. Being separate from each other is not right.
And when I wouldn't tell him where we were, he finally exploded in anger.
Don't turn Zoe around for your reasons.
Who are you to tell me what to do? He was so selfish that I got angry and yelled at him over the phone. If you were going to talk like that, you might as well come here. I'll give you the facts. When I told my husband that I was staying at my parents' house, he visited me right away that weekend. When Zoe saw my husband, she quickly hid behind me. He was shocked by her reaction.
Zoe, hey,
It's Daddy. What's wrong? I don't like you. You scare me. I want Mommy. Mommy only. She grabbed my clothes and wouldn't let go. Deciding it was too dangerous to continue, I took my husband outside. Zoe, why? He's holding his head in his hands. You see, it's not me who's rejecting you. It's Zoe. Of course she rejects you. After you yelled at her like that. No wonder she hates you. A father who never comes home and puts his nephew before her. But I did it for my sister's sake. Whose father are you? What is your sister to you? My husband is silent. I asked my parents to take care of my daughter for now and decided to go to a nearby coffee shop to talk with my husband about the future. As soon as I got to the table, I presented the divorce papers to my husband. He looked at me with a stunned expression on his face. Please, divorce me. I want to get away from you, and so does Zoe. I only wanted to do it for my sister. I thought you and Zoe would understand. I don't understand what he's saying anymore. Why do we have to go along with your selfishness? I came down hard on my husband, demanding to know what he had been doing and saying. I could have laughed it off if you had joked about Zoe becoming Aaron's wife. But you yelled at her and never apologized. Do you have any idea how much it hurt Zoe? And how much she cried? You are always talking about yourself. I ask you again, what does your sister mean to you? She doesn't seem like just a sister to me. Then, my husband began to whisper the truth. My husband and his sister were really close. They traveled together to hot springs and overseas, sent each other presents to each other's birthdays, and they always shared a room together at home. When my sister-in-law found out that my husband and I were getting married, she told me that she thought my brother loved her the most. I knew it was to be expected, but they were siblings with an unusual and extraordinary emotional connection. I don't have a relationship with her, you know, but I love her. I love her as a person, and I love her as a sister. So when I found out that she was going to have a baby without being married, I wanted to help her. Having Aaron and Zoe get married was my husband and sister-in-law's idea. If we can be together, then let our children get married. How horrifying. The reason behind the husband neglecting his wife and daughter. I see the whole picture now. Do you think I'm going to let you get away with it? I will never forgive you for your cruelty to Zoe. And how dare you can say family should be together? My husband kept his head down and said in a quiet voice, My sister is moving out soon. She's getting married. Huh? So you were just going to get lonely and try to make us a family again? That's not going to happen. My husband's immediate response was to hang on to me. Please, I'll be a good father from now on. I'll be a good husband. Please, Leah. He bowed his head. Give me a break. I don't trust you anymore. Zoe feels the same way. We don't trust your parents and your sister too. It's completely insane that people can smile so openly about what happened at the birthday party. Since then, Zoe has never been able to speak well to any adults outside of me and my parents. She just wanted to celebrate her cousin's birthday. You destroyed her innocent soul. I won't let you do it anymore, and I will never forgive you. I want a divorce. I'll get custody. I can't leave my daughter with you. What do you say? I've just completely cut off my husband's lifeline. Goodbye, I said coldly. I will do everything I can for my daughter. Always have and always will. I became a mother with the determination. After that, my husband and I divorced. I got custody of my daughter, and he's paying me monthly child support. After the divorce, he moved back in with his parents. I guess the separation from his daughter was very hard on him because he started missing a lot of work and eventually resigned. He is now unemployed and reckless. I know this because his parents are kind enough to tell me what's going on with him. Please give him a chance. He's Zoe's father after all. I'm not going back together with him. If I did, there's no point of getting a divorce. He had it all coming. It's not right for him to come crying to me now. There must be another reason why my husband is in such a miserable state, and it's just not the divorce. My sister-in-law, with whom he has an unusual relationship, has moved out. By the way, my sister-in-law is married to the father of Aaron, the man she had an unfaithful relationship. He divorced his wife and remarried my sister-in-law, and were forced to pay his ex-wife a considerable amount of alimony. His sister is also in a difficult situation financially. Well, if she wanted to marry him, even if she had to pay the price, I guess that's fine. But I hear that their marriage is quickly deteriorating due to their financial difficulties. Money's tight, and the typical ending is near. As for me, I quit my part-time job after the divorce and got a full-time job. I'm raising my daughter with the help of my parents. Just knowing that my daughter is happy and enjoying her life makes me, her mother, happy. I'm glad I had her, and I'm grateful to my ex-husband for giving me this child. On my birthday, Zoe baked a cake with my mother and wrote me a letter. Thank you for everything, Mom. You make me so proud of you. I love you. My daughter hugs me. Thank you. I love you too, Zoe. I would do anything for her. I would overcome anything. A mother cannot rest to protect her daughter's smile.